I'm tired, but I can do this. This is the last go. I'm energized. I'm ready to do this. Let's push. Let's bring my baby into this world. And all I could think was, no, no. I have had no sleep over the last 2.5 days. I am exhausted and I am acutely uncomfortable because they were trying to put me in, like you saw that in some of the positions, I'm like leaning forward, like sitting on like a throne, because they wanted to try to get me into a position, hopefully that would help move the baby down, which was not working. So 1 o'clock in the morning, they're like, okay, we're going to push. And I'm like, no. But you had to do it. And I pushed for 4 hours, as I think I said in the last video, because the baby was so high and nowhere near where he needed to be. It took me that long. And I guess the way I was pushing, I was using my face. I was trying not to clench my jaw, but basically I just scrunched up my face and was just pushing, because it takes a long time to get into the swing of where to push, how to push. I mean, you think it's going to be instinctual. It's like pooping, but it wasn't quite like that. So I tried and eventually did get the hang of it, and apparently I was a good pusher. I was getting good movement. It's just the baby had so far to go that it took so long. And because I was pushing so much with my face, I had completely swelled up here, and again, I could by the time Sawyer was born, I could barely see because my eyes were so swollen, and I looked really, really scary. But yeah, so that's the birth. I mean, the moment well, it's not really the birth. So I had been pushing, so somewhere around 5 o'clock in the morning, they said, listen, we're not making the kind of progress we want. At this point, we really need to talk about doing a C-section or using the vacuum. However, you know, the C-section has its own complications, but the vacuum, like, sometimes the problem is, it was an intern there, not my doctor, who was down below trying to push, helping me with the pushing. It was an intern that came up to me, or a resident, they're not called interns, that was dumb. She's like, the problem is that with the vacuum, sometimes we get the head out, but the shoulders are still too big that we actually end up having to do a C-section anyway, and so we have to push the baby back in. That's right. Let that soak in, people. I don't know if I've said this before in the last video, but we have to push the baby back in and then do an emergency cesarean section. So I was freaked out, and at that point I had been pushing for 4 hours, and you know, God does you a favor, because I did not realize that I had been pushing for 4 hours. I knew that it had been a long time, but the clock was so far away I couldn't see it. I didn't have my glasses on. So thank heaven I didn't know how long I'd been pushing, because I would have been really discouraged. All I knew is that at that point I was exhausted. The other word for more than exhausted, that's what I was at that point, because I'd been pushing for so long. I was exhausted. I could barely see, and I didn't understand why, and I didn't know what was happening. And so I looked at Brian, and I'm like, please just decide. And he's like, what do you mean just decide? He's like, I can't make this decision. And I'm like, I just can't, hon. I just can't. And it makes me emotional thinking about it, because I just couldn't. I was so tired and so frustrated, and they tell you that they have to shove it back in? I don't know if the looks of horror on your faces are the same as the look of horror that must have been on my face. But so I look at Brian looks at me, and we're like, let's just do the C-section. Let's just do the C-section. And so the resident walks away to go talk to the doctor, and Brian, I guess, is taken aside by his mother, and she's like, does Elisa know how close she is? But I didn't hear that. I'm just going, I'm so done. I was relieved, you know. It sucks that I don't have the C-section, but I'm thinking, oh, I must not be anywhere near where I need to be. If they're offering me the C-section, I must not be there. Because the entire labor, people were saying, honey, you're so close. Elisa, you're so close. You're so close. But then, like, that last, like, hour, no one had said that. No one was saying you're so close. No one was saying, I'm seeing his crowning. People were saying, you know, hours before, people were saying, oh, I can see his head. Oh, no, it's gone. Oh, I can see his head. No, it's gone. And so no one had said, oh, you're so close. Anytime recently. He's crowning his head. So I didn't know what kind of progress I had made, and I was too tired. I didn't even ask. So I didn't know where I was, so all I knew was, get the baby out of me. I'm tired. I can't do this. And I hate it when women say that, giving birth, because you can, you are, you will. But I just was done. I was just done. And so then the doctor comes up and she's like, listen, I hear you want to do a C-section, but trust me, I can get this baby out with a vacuum. I really suggest that we try the vacuum. And so I look at Brian, I'm like, hell, I don't care. Fine, let's try the vacuum. If I'm gonna have a C-section anyway, shove it back in, whatever. So I'm like, just get it out of me. And I swear that at that point, my mom said it was just chaos. Because at that point, they have to prep you also for a cesarean section. Sorry, ladies, I got a call. Anyway, so at that point, they have to prep you for a cesarean section. And so a million doctors came in and a million nurses. So there was like a nurse, a doctor, and like a resident person for the baby. And then there was 4 or 5 doctors, or doctors and nurses combination for me as well. So my mom said that her and my mother-in-law actually had to stand on the couch that was across the room so they could actually even see him being born. And my photographer, bless her heart, was like scooting in between taking pictures and stuff, because she knew that I wanted like pictures of the things that were going on. And then Brian was right here by me the whole time, and then I had a resident helping me push, or holding my leg and stuff. So that was that. And I guess like she had, but I didn't even see the vacuum. All I know is that we decided on the vacuum. It was suddenly there, feels like 2 seconds. And then I feel like 2 pushes later that she just popped that baby out and threw him right onto my stomach. And it is really just like complete relief. And then they put the baby on me, and he was immediately crying, and that part was beautiful. He was there, and he was a little purple, and, well, he wasn't even little. He was ginormous. They put him right here on my chest, and he went down the entire length of me. I felt like he was huge, and he was crying, but the moment I started talking to him, he actually put his little hand right near my mouth. I don't know. He put his hand right in my mouth, and it was beautiful. But, so then he was born, and then, it felt like 2 seconds later, they're like, okay, Lisa, we have to get this placenta out, so we need you to push. And so I still had the baby, I still had Sawyer with me, and they were like, okay, push. And I remember pushing and bearing down and pushing, and then all I remember is waking up and going, and looking over at Brian, freaking out, and I went, I think I just passed out. And they were like, Elisa, and then immediately they were like, Elisa, you have to push again. And I did again, and I passed out again. So I don't know if it was exhaustion or blood loss or what it was, but I passed out again. And they were like, we really need you to focus on this, so we're going to take the baby. We don't want you to drop him. They didn't say that, obviously, but the NICU people took the baby, and then I'm looking at Brian, and they're trying to get me to push, but no, it's not working. And eventually, a few pushes later, they did get it out, but all I kept feeling was gushing. And so I kept looking at Brian, and it feels like a dream, my memories of that time. And I was like, hon, I feel a lot of blood coming out. And he was like, no, babe. He's like, hon, you're fine. The doctors know what they're doing. You're doing fine. And then I swear, like 2 seconds later, I'm like, no, I feel a lot of blood. And he was like, no, hon, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. And I swear, straight face. But now people tell me that, in fact, I was massively hemorrhaging, and the doctor was up to her, like, elbow, inside trying to scrape out things and making sure that they had all the pieces of my placenta, but that I was massively hemorrhaging and just shy of needing a transfusion. But I don't remember how much blood they said it was, but it was apparently horrifying, and my mom had to leave. She had to go into the bathroom, and luckily the photographer and her go to the same church, so they were praying, and Brian is sitting there completely trying not to freak out and being the best support ever, because I would have never guessed that I was hemorrhaging, and it was so terrifying. The because he was thinking she's gonna die. That is not a natural amount of blood. She's going to die. And my mom's like, I've been to 8 births and I've never seen anything like it. She was like, it was like a horror show. So I'm sorry if you guys are squeamish. I don't mean to go into that much detail, but it just helps explain, I think, to you guys why it was so scary and traumatic. Luckily, I didn't know that that's what was happening, but just everything was just so scary, and I just didn't, at no point did I was really sure of what was going on, and everything was like the worst case scenario, and everyone kept telling me to sleep, but you're having contractions all the first night, so I couldn't sleep through those, and then people wouldn't stop coming in and out of the room, the nurses mostly, but, you know, my family, and so that was distracting, and I couldn't just get any sleep, and everyone's like, well, you should rest while you can, and it's easy to say, but when you're having contractions, it's hard to rest, and once I even had the epidural, it's just, you're so uncomfortable, and you are in labor. I mean, whether you can feel the contraction or not, your body knows, and I just couldn't relax enough to fall asleep for any significant amount of time. So anyway, so I went into labor somewhere around 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, and I gave birth to Sawyer at 5:51 on Saturday morning, and it was a crazy, crazy ride. It was crazy. And then, you know, after that, we got to see him for a few minutes. They, once they took care of the hemorrhaging, I'm not even sure how much longer after that, they did give me him back wrapped up, but, because immediately they realized that there was breathing issues, with Sawyer, like the girls came in and they saw him for like a minute, and the nurses, I was like, well, the girls haven't even got to hold him yet. Do you have to take him to the NICU now? And they were like, we really need to take him now. And so I looked at Brian, I was like, stay with him. And then I didn't see Brian for the next 4 hours. Because they were doing a whole bunch of things to the baby and making sure he was okay. And so, you know, they're cleaning you up and they're, you know, like, okay, let's go to the bathroom. Okay, let's, you know, and you're trying to walk, and you know, finally, when I had my, when my epidural was wearing off and stuff, and, the nurse is trying to help you put on, like, the mom panties and the diaper thing, and she has one of those puppy pad things folded up, actually, with a pad on top of it, inside a pair of the, like, you know, Expando panties, so really was like a whole thing of just uncomfortable. And at that point, you know, my family had left, and Brian was with the baby, and it was just, they take you from the labor and delivery room, and you're supposed to have your baby, you know, you're supposed to go to the postpartum wing with your kid, rolling in the little cart next to you, and I was being rolled in a wheelchair alone with 2 nurses I didn't know, and all of our things from the labor and delivery room, because Brian was with the baby and the family was all, they were all gone because we'd all been up for 3 days. So they were all giving us space, but at Kaiser, when they move a mother from the labor and delivery room to the postpartum room, they, in celebration of your baby, play a lullaby over the thing so everyone knows, sorry ladies, that a baby was born, and it's supposed to be exciting and fun, and, you know, you have your baby, and it's, you know, you're supposed to do this walk, and, you know, it was just sad, because I'm thinking my baby's in the NICU having breathing issues, and my husband's there, and I haven't seen him since I gave birth, and my family's all gone, so I'm being wheeled, listening to this stupid lullaby alone while my baby's in the NICU. So it was sad and not exciting like it should have been. And then, you know, my baby spent the last 3 weeks in the NICU, various NICUs all over the Bay Area. So, and then you know, they finally put me in my postpartum room, and, eventually they took me to see the baby, and Brian, and it was just, it should have been beautiful, and it should have been, you know, all my brain kept thinking the whole day and the whole experience was it should have been, it should have been, it should have been. And I know better. I know that it's not supposed to be anything, but I wanted it to be something else than what it was. And I wanted my birth experience to be something it wasn't.